Alright, intermission report. You gotta find out a different way to title these things other than for the week of October because they're just going to be more spontaneous according to how things are presented to me in the future from now on. One day at a time, living day by day. All those things were good advice to help us along. And if we So I guess this would be a dual title thing. It has to do partially with in the long run. It's going to explain what happened to John Morgan. You know, the old John Morgan that was bad that had to change didn't change until he had a woman that kept him more in check. As much as we had hard times that eventually caused us to not fit and break up. My ex-fiance Paula was a large part of me changing away from the worst part of me in my teens to mid-20s. So, so yeah, I'm giving Paula credit. Yes, somebody shoot me, I'm giving Paula credit. I give my ex-wife credit, despite it takes two, there were certain things that she should have got out of me that she didn't get out of me while we were together, and that's how the divorce and separation and the whole thing happened. I was selfish. I tried to look like a selfless person by giving minuscule amounts to certain people out of generosity and kindness and stuff, but it was still way too much about me, and that part of me had to change. It was a little less about me by the time I met Paula and we got together and so on. So you all know the early me, the good with the bad, and so on. And there was a lot of selfishness and self-serving things about me all the way up to my late 20s and stuff. And then I gained more responsibility. Eventually, I held down jobs better. I eventually caught my child support up and different things, uh, it, over the years, and I got better. And there was a double side of me. I liked being entertained, so therefore I liked being in bands where there was other singers and front people besides myself, and everybody took turns singing songs. I liked being in gig situations where there was multiple bands lined up, starting from afternoon into the evening, and see how other bands entertained. But once I was behind the microphone, and it was my turn. Then I was also happy-go-lucky, life of the party, not angry, and that's the side of people that people loved, and that's the way people like to see me. That's how I established all my friendships, both audience and musician-wise, and stuff. So I had a good go with society. I did some right things. I did some wrong things, and I'm really not much different than anybody else in those contexts. But it's mainly more after I started seeing things for what they were, instead of seeing things in a way that didn't upset me. The world, if I took good looks at the world, it would always depress me, and it showed up in some of my music when I wrote. I had some very depressing songs as much as I had happy ones and catchy ones and stuff. You know, I was happy in my ignorance in one sense. I gained all this secular knowledge because, wow, that's cool, this science thing, or this history thing, or this, I had an addiction to that, really. If I would get instant interest instant interest, in lots of things, read lots of textbooks, even though that wasn't what I was going to college for. Wow, this is really into it. I went and instead of going to the library like a normal person, I would go to a college bookstore sometimes. I would buy a used college book and read through it and learn everything that I could out of it, and then sell it back to the college bookstore for a slightly lesser price, so it was like I was going to college, except I just wasn't under the direction of a teacher. So biblically, you know, I had some knowledge too, but there's a catch-22 with knowledge. Biblically, with knowledge, we know that God said, "My people perished for their lack of knowledge." He's talking about people's ignorance. You can be happy you're being ignorant because the ignorance that you have is toward what the wickedness in the world and the sinfulness and the breaking of 10 Commandments does, that we think is so innocent. Adultery, for example, children growing up without fathers. Children long for two parents and fathers. It's ingrained in our system. Yeah, you can get away with raising a child without father or mother present, and maybe have some success with it, but it's ingrained in our system to have two parents. And it causes a lot of heartache and heartbreak, not knowing your father, not who your brothers and sisters might be, so on and so forth. A man especially thinks it's quite innocent. Oh, conquer 5 or 6 women. Now you have 5 or 6 children from 5 or 6 different women. The brothers and sisters barely know each other. They barely know you because you never really established and stayed in a relationship with any one of them. It's confusing, it's heartbreaking to the mama, to the child, to the father too. The father doesn't understand. The mama doesn't want a irresponsible babysitter, so why would she want an irresponsible father having that much influence over the child too? So some fathers, well, they want a relationship with their kid, but the mother is apprehensive about it. Look at the big mess that adultery causes. That's just one example out of 10 Commandments. You have gluttony, jealousy, loving your neighbor. Hate is a huge example. You would expect that you would be hating a murderer, a rapist, or this person or that person because of so much hurt they had caused. But the hate doesn't just hurt them. Sometimes it doesn't even hurt them. They have no remorse and no moral compass, but yet it's still hurting you. The hatred causes a negative energy that makes you sick. It makes you anxious. It makes you depressed that the hated person has so much that they don't deserve. That's why we're supposed to pray for them, even though we hate them and look at them as an enemy and like that. The hate is hurting us too, so the hate has to end somewhere. It has to go into forgiveness and love and an attempt to understand those kind of things. Okay, so knowledge. I put in all this secular knowledge. Knowledge is power. But there's power in a handgun or a butcher knife as well. You can cut things or put holes in things, harm things. You can run a bad person off if you have a gun. If they're tending to do bad things to you or your family or your children, you got a gun in your house and you can get to it quick enough. You can stop the burglary before the police get there. Call the ambulance. The ambulance hauls the burglar away with a gunshot wound. And all you have to do is shoot them in the leg. They can't chase you around the house. or stand up to strangle you or anything if they're shot in the leg and they're down on the floor because they're shot in the leg. So it's not a matter of thou shalt not kill and you're murdering a person unless it's accidental because a gunshot causes a blood clot or some thing like unexpected like that. And a knife has power, but the tree of knowledge was off limits to Adam and Eve because humans are young in their creation, inexperienced. You give human beings that kind of power they're not ready to use, and they're more likely to use for wrong things that will hurt themselves or other people. Then tree of knowledge was off limits, and they didn't listen, and of course different things happened that we know of. Adam and Eve eating the fruit of knowledge is equivalent to giving a 4-year-old a butcher knife or a handgun. More than likely they're not going to handle it right, they're not going to hold it up in the air right, they're going to shoot something that they're not intending to shoot, they're going to cut something that they're not intending to cut. They're going to cause damage to something, so you don't give a 4-year-old a knife or a handgun, right? And you don't give Adam and Eve the fruit of knowledge. That's too much power for a young race or type of life form to handle and have. It's going to be used in all the wrong ways, and if you look at human history, that tree of knowledge was used in all the wrong ways. Yeah, you should have knowledge that there's evil there, because evil comes against you as a good person if you're trying to be a good person. Knowledge of good and evil does have an upside, but the downside was way worse than the upside, and that's why they were, So I got to all this secular knowledge, and when you have too much knowledge and it's not organized in any way where it's useful and functional to you, then instead of the knowledge making you smart, it makes you confused. You're applying the knowledge to the wrong places in the wrong context because it's scattered knowledge. And secular knowledge is of God as long as it's the truth and not manipulated to deceive people. Science, is just explains how God made something. It explained how a tree grows. God made the trees. It explains how the human organs function. God created those organs in us, those bones, those whatever. Knowledge is neutral. It's used for good or it's used for evil. It's neutral until it's put into action, until it's used for something. It's what it's used for. We weren't responsible enough to use that knowledge for the right thing. And so I had this secular knowledge, but I'm seeking God's knowledge because I was encouraged by the right people to do so. I ended up doing the correspondence thing for the Biblical Historian Council. And because I was addicted to knowledge, it was God's knowledge instead of secular knowledge, but I was still interested. But the Biblical Historian Council, being in contact with them and other people that were a little bit more advanced in their spirituality than myself, I was learning the Bible in the proper context, which I wasn't doing at any point when I was going to a specific Sunday school or Bible study or in the past before I was around the right people. The first thing they told me to do is they told me that I had to throw out, not necessarily wipe my memory. Knowledge, you can access it and becomes handy in certain situations. It's like deleting stuff from a computer to hide it from the FBI. There's a way they can still take that hard drive and retrieve and get that stuff back. You can still get some of that stuff back that you shoot out into the back burner and in the background away from you. And so I learned about the Bible in a more proper context. Not to say that I'm more perfect or any better than anybody else, and I'm not going to judge where anybody's at. It's just what I did at the time. What happened to John Morgan? He learned the knowledge in the proper context. And one thing that we should know about God is miserable, especially right now. So I became miserable. I see wickedness for what it is. People make themselves and other people miserable through the wickedness, through their not disobedience of the Ten Commandments. Every violation of the Ten Commandments, as innocent as it seems at the time, causes some kind of harm to somebody. It causes somebody to be miserable. You to be miserable, or the person that you have done something to be miserable, or the combination of the two. God is miserable because he wants us to be happy, and he's given us the tools to be happy, but yet we're miserable. And it makes him miserable because he doesn't want us to be miserable. When you start looking into, God still has way more knowledge than me. I'm just taking what knowledge I have gotten of God and about how to do things right. And stuff. So I'm putting myself under his will, so therefore I'm also putting myself under his mindset, his terms of thinking. And so God's miserable, people are miserable. I'm like God now in the sense that I don't want people to be miserable either. And I don't want to be miserable. I soaked up the content of the knowledge of the Bible in the right way, where I don't fit anymore. So, you're looking at somebody that's depressed because I see the wickedness and what it's doing in the world for what it really is, and also the way the world is heading and why it's heading that way. From what I started learning by being more whole gospel and applying that stuff in the right places as it applies to what's happening today. When you become not in this, you become in this world but not of this world. When you go that far with it and place yourself under the will of God and wanting what God wants, not so much as what you want. Of course I want fleshly things. Of course I would like to have a couple nice material things that I don't necessarily need. And, God says he'll provide those for us. If I'm, working with him, I'm praying for it, and, I'm asking for it. He'll provide those. But I lost my materialism. I have no want for things. And I want food because food keeps me alive. I want water because water keeps me alive. I want a roof over my head, a shelter because it keeps me warm in a blistering cold winter and cool in a hot summer, as long as I have AC or fan or something, or paint the roof white if it's a hot climate, or paint the roof black if it's a cold climate. There's lots of different ways you make your house comfortable. But I'm happy with the basics. It's nice to have things that you don't need, and things are nice to have. It's what makes you an individual, makes you interesting to other people. It's part of the interest in life and interaction with other people. People are interesting. You like knickknacks that are owls, another person like frogs, another person like butterflies, birds of different types, it's those things make us unique, and there's nothing wrong with wanting some material things. It's when you place having those material things over any sensibility. If you're mortgaging half of your house and killing yourself to pay that mortgage off just so that you could have those extra material things, and like that, you're placing a high value on those material things. You think those material things make you happy, but in the long run, they're making you more miserable than happy. Materialism is the big problem with the wickedness in the world. Everybody thinks that lack of patience too. Everybody thinks that the material things that they want, they're not necessary. They have to have them right now. They're not willing to wait for them. It makes places like Rent-A-Center that charges you 3 times as much because you can't pay for it in cash and you buy it over a couple of years. You know, the Rent-A-Center became a thriving entity because people have no patience to wait until they have the ability to buy it without it being price gouged. It's a race against the Joneses. It's a jealousy of your neighbor coveting your neighbor's oxen and wife and house and this and that. Materialism is probably not number one, maybe it's number two, of where the world has gone today. If you need it that badly, the devil's going to wave it in front of your face and say, you want to keep these nice things you have here, I guess you don't really get to keep them if you don't take the mark of the beast and become part of the Antichrist society, which causes you to be rejected by God, and God doesn't even recognize you anymore. A big part of the mark of the beast is combining you with artificial intelligence and changing and altering your DNA in ways that God didn't make human DNA to be altered. So in the long run, you're rejected by God when you become part of the Antichrist world, because you're not even the human that God created anymore. You're the transhuman that the rulers of darkness in high places manipulated science with to create you into something else that's not the human that God had in mind. You ask, well, why is it so serious that we don't get to go to heaven if we take a mark of the beast? That's the detailed part to it. Once you go all the way into that world that's coming, there's no going back. You're not even the Adam and Eve human anymore. You're something else that God didn't create. It's called an abomination if it was something that God never intended to be created in the first place. The abominable snowman, the Frankenstein monster is abomination. God never intended for people to have brain transplants, that type of thing. The abominations is the big other big factor, and so the abominations, the materialism, that's making people miserable. The jealousy, the unforgiveness, all these things making people miserable. Here I am with the knowledge enough where I, much better at not being jealous of what somebody else has. Much better at not being judgmental at what some bad place in their life that they brought onto themselves. Much better at accepting people for who they are, being generous, and trying to give them a lift up even if they don't appreciate it later. It's not me that didn't appreciate it, it's them. It's God that they'll deal with, that they didn't appreciate what I did or what anybody else does for them. And in all that, I feel I'm so much different, and people look at me as so much different, and start looking at me in man's judgment because I don't fit in this society. This society is really not of God. It's heading further away from God all the time, and it's because the devil has been given his time to the point where he will end up in these end times tribulations and happen to choose between God and the Antichrist. So it seems like I need depression pills, but it's very rare for chemical imbalances in the brain to cause depression and people to be depressed for no reason. if it even exists at all. People are depressed because they see things that make them depressed. They go through things that make them depressed. They hear things that make them depressed. Same way with anxiety, you know. They're going through things that make them anxious. Paranoia, they're going through things that make them fearful. You know, psychology is 90% bullshit. There's that little 10% of, yeah, they're kind of right about that. The rest of it is bullshit. I should say psychiatry, the medicine side of it, is 90% bullshit. Brain chemical imbalance bullshit. No, no. You see things that make you paranoid. You see things that make you you go through these things. They make you depressed, anxious, paranoid. All these little mental health things. My depression, you know, is not that, and the pills aren't going to fix it. There's a big sign of me going to migrant and vagabond thing. That's something a depressed person does. You need help. You need this and that. You should be monitored. We should be, you know. No, no, no. Yeah, but no. I don't. I've reached a level where I don't fit in society. Vagabond and migrant is a choice for me. But I'm going to be on the forefront and making videos like this, and it'll be an adventure while I do it. It does involve the scooter with a battery upgrade and a solar power system on a trailer hauled behind it. I will be offering people that with large yards or stretches of wood a little bit of money to stay there for a couple days when I'm tired of the travel. Other than that, with the scooter I can travel anywhere from 20 to 40 miles a day. Do everything that I need to do stopped, just like when you stop for gas, you go to the bathroom, you get some snacks and drinks and blah blah blah. When I'm stopped, I'll do everything that I need to do while the scooter is charging, go another several miles to the next town, on and on. It'll take me 15 times as long as somebody that's on a road trip with a car, but oh well, why am I in a hurry? I've only got so much life left on this planet anyways. The vagabond thing, it represents me being separate from a world, you know, that I don't fit in. The world looks at me as a person that doesn't fit, you know, a misfit. You know, why not give them that? Yes, I'm a misfit. I'm going to stay a misfit until I die. But you see me on video every day. I'm not, I did threaten to at one point because I was a little upset with a few people. But you're not going to lose contact with me. I'm going to be doing a regular video show about trekking across the country in a very unusual way. I'll meet lots of people. I'll talk to lots of people. I'll still have a functional life. God will place me someplace where I can help somebody or somebody can help me. And it's all under the will of God, and I've prayed about it. The will of God is I become a vagabond, a migrant, very much like the ones crossing the border that they're putting on buses and shipping around the countryside instead of sending them back to their home country. But I'm not Hispanic, I'm mostly Scottish, and I choose to do that. That's what I want to do with the last part of my life. I'll stay in contact with friends and family. You'll see what I'm up to, what I'm doing, and God tells me it's going to be amazing, and I believe God about that. So I don't need depression pills to stop me from going vagabond mode or trek mode, as officially it would be called through the organization. I'm not any more depressed doing that than I am depressed sitting here, living in a house like a normal person with electricity and a roof. It's all still depressing, and I pray about it, and I find ways to be counted as all, you know, joy. one way or another, and to not be so depressed that I'm killing myself or harming myself in any way. You know, and I'm doing it without medications. And what's happening to John Morgan is John Morgan just doesn't fit. I recognize I don't fit. Y'all gotta see it. I don't fit. I just don't fit. You might as well accept it and see it. I don't fit. I accept it and see it. I don't fit. I'm going to do something else. It's going to be amazing, and God said I'm helping people, and people are helping me with what I'm doing here. And at least I'll fit. You know, me and my dog will fit. People will recognize who I am. There will be some kind of at least regional fame involved with what I'm doing, because it's something that's so unusual that it's going to be interesting to people, even if they think I'm doing some kind of a wrong thing or a weird thing that I shouldn't do. And I might as well be happy that I don't fit. I shouldn't fit. I recognize where the world is faltering. Why would I want to fit into a world that I'm really not happy with, that God's not happy with, a society that is faltering and ignorant and not listening to the right things? Don't want to fit. So this is J. Patrick Morgan, the Wise Man Say Do, and I'm killing it. Intermission report number 2. I'll figure out a title and I'll type it into the thing when I'm uploading the video. See ya.